Gr- uh, We're going to go ahead and get started with Sunday school. So what I'm going to do here is, and for the next couple services, I'll do this just to make sure everybody's on the same page. And I know we have some children's workers that will be downstairs, so I don't want anybody to miss any of this. So there's a couple things that we really want to be praying for. And the two major things are, first, Jay Hobson's in the hospital, and he is, I would say, not doing well at all. His blood sugar was up at 600 on Friday. It is, last we heard as of yesterday, was down to 475. Where he's at in Brighton, they are not allowing visitors in the ICU, and so even Jeannie has been calling in to get updates, and today they wouldn't give her one. Now, whether that person knew, I don't know what the deal was, so she was heading down there this morning. She was trying to find out what his numbers were this morning and got no information. So she's heading down there, and so we want to be praying for Jay as he's in ICU there in Brighton at St. Elizabeth's. Also, as many of you know, the Alsey family. We want to be praying for the Alsey family as little Wesley, who just turned 3, does have leukemia. It is I guess, common form of leukemia in children, but it does need to be treated aggressively. And so he yesterday started the first of 28 days of chemo treatments down there at Tufts. He's at the floating hospital there, which is a wonderful children's hospital. But so there's several things that we need to be praying about. First off, we need obviously to pray that the treatments work. Secondly, the medicine that they're using, while effective at treating leukemia, doesn't mean it will, but can cause bone marrow cancer. And so that is a concern that we need to be praying that does not happen. Now, after 5 weeks, if all goes well, then he would be able to come home. However, that's really just the beginning. The treatment for leukemia in children is a 3-year process of periodic treatments going down to Boston. And at any point in time during that 3 years, he could end up back in the hospital. It doesn't mean he will, it just means he could. And there's a lot of unknown, there's a lot of different things. And so I'd say that I met with Walter and Abby yesterday in much, much better spirits than they were on Thursday, after talking with doctors and medical people and understanding better what's going on and what will be happening. They are able to stay there in the specialized wing there at Tufts, and so what they have is just down the hallway from where Wesley's room is almost like, if you could think like of a college dorm area that has individual rooms but a common area in the center. It's exactly what they have for parents whose kids are getting treatment right down the hallway. And so there is a sleeping room and a common area that has a kitchen and a little living room area for them to be at. Right now, Walter is traveling back and forth to his mother's house, where the rest of the kids are staying, which is in Randolph, which is only about 30 minutes from the hospital, which is nice because Tufts is actually you got to go through the city to get to Tufts. It's on the back side of the city there, and so the Randolph South Shore, so it's a little bit easier to get there as opposed to having to go through the city, and we're further away. So right now, that's what they're doing. And so we want to be praying for Wesley. We want to be praying for the treatment to not have any of the side effects or serious side effects. There are some side effects that are expected. And pray for them as they're, managing their other, the kids and everything that goes along with that. Also, and this is something that any cards that come in today, I think there's the offering plate. I put up another offering plate. You can put your cards in there. And we'll get a church card as well that everybody can just sign. But if you want to get a personalized card, you may do that. A lot of people have reached out and say, hey, what can we do to help? Honestly, they really have no idea what their needs even are. What I can tell you is this, and this is how I see it. Their needs are probably going to be money. They're not right now, but they're probably, there's a good chance it will be. And the reason behind that is Walter, fortunately, has basically, he's one of those guys who never calls out sick, and has accrued about 8 weeks of sick time. Well, he's going to be using 5 of that right off the bat, which gives him about 3 weeks of sick time. And again, we know he'll accrue some over the next 3 years, but that gives him 3 weeks of sick time for the next 3 years. Chances are that will be used up at just incrementally going down there for appointments, and you never know what's going to happen. And so I think it would be good if we could help bolster some of that. And so I really would like to see our church do something of significance. And yes. Yes. Right. That's fine. That's the one option. There's already a GoFundMe through another family member that's been set up. You can give that. You can also give through here. I'd like our church to at least in the beginning give $10,000. And so I'll contribute 1,000 of that up front. And so you pray about what the Lord would have you to do. And I'd like to give them like a month's worth of some expenses from the church. And so you just pray about God. What God? I'm going to collect that money. I'll be going down there once or twice a week. That's another option. You could talk about that and with Yvette. And if you want to give to the GoFundMe as well, I've had another church reach out to me about contributing to them. So there's going to be a couple different revenues or sources of revenue for them. And so, you can do that or just give them the cash to get what they want, what they need. Anyhow, that's what we'll be doing. I will be mentioning this every service for probably the next 2 weeks. As the money comes in, I'll be going down there Thursday. We'll give to them whatever. Yes? Would the giving be made out to Lifeline? Yeah, make the giving out to Lifeline Baptist Church, all right? Put it under other, all right, in your offering, and just write Elsie, A-L-C-E. And we will make sure that as the money comes in, 100% of the money that's to them will go directly to them. We'll just bring a check down to them so that they can do whatever they want. Let me just say this. I appreciated Walter. He's already thinking ahead, and they have a rental unit that, he's like, look, if I got to sell it to make, I'll do it. And I said, Walter, I appreciate that spirit because that's the right spirit. But let's not do that till the Lord says so, all right? He worked very hard to get that income property that could benefit his family long term. He's willing to liquidate it if he needs to, and I think that's the right spirit. And if there can be other ways. So I will say all of this again in the service, so you might get this reiterated. But I just want to make sure everybody knows and be praying. And if you'd like to contribute to the LCs, you can do that. You can do it online. What we probably will be doing is making some social media posts and giving whether you can the address for the church to mail a check or a link to our online giving and giving people as much information as they need to contribute to that. So, if we're able to do more than that number I gave you, that's just the number God put on my heart that our church could do. And so let's be praying about what the Lord would have us to do. All right. Now, do continue to pray for Suzanne recovering from her surgery. I wasn't even sure what she had done. I didn't even know what was happening, so I just saw the pictures, and I thought, Roger, did she get a nose job? Like, what's the, Yeah, it's an internal nose job, but you can't tell. I mean, I was just like, so Suzanne got a nose job. That's what happened. And I'm sure she if she's watching, will appreciate that. But anyhow, we will have a time of prayer in the service, but we're going to get to our Sunday school lesson now. And let me turn wireless on here. I just turned it on for you there, Philip. Yes, I did. Yes. All right. So now, as we look at our Sunday school, we started last week the national defense, and we talked about for a few minutes how the government has a responsibility to defend their nation against other nations that might attack. And we saw in the Old Testament, Israel. In the Old Testament, Israel did this. And we talked about how there's some concerns about in the Ten Commandments in Exodus 20, verse 13, where it says, "Thou shalt not kill." But then yet God turns around and says, well, go, kill these people in battle. And we were talking about is that a contradiction? And the answer, of course, is no, because the word for thou shalt not kill, that word kill in the Hebrew is dealing with murder, whereas the killing that occurs in war is a different Hebrew word, and they have different meanings. And so we understand the difference between murder and battle in war are different things. And then we also talked about how the Bible does not speak against the vocation of being a soldier. In fact, Jesus talked to soldiers about being content with their wages. The Bible spoke favorably of Cornelius, who was a centurion, and never condemned him for being a soldier. And so we find that is not spoken of negatively in the Bible. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to pick up where we left off on the next topic within the umbrella of national defense, is how can we know if a war is a just war? All right? We hear that terminology of a just war. And there are wrong types of war. All right? There are. Wars that are merely for conquest and plunder are wrong. We just want that nation's resources, so we're going to go conquer them. That is not a just war. So how can we tell if a war is right or wrong? And during centuries of ethical discussion about the questions of war, a common viewpoint has developed, and with much input from Christians. And it is what's called the just war tradition. And this viewpoint argues that war is morally right or just when it meets certain criteria, okay? When it meets certain criteria. It also argues that there are certain moral restrictions on the way war should be conducted. So if there's a war going on, well, is it right? Well, there's ways to determine that. And two, how should you conduct yourself during that? So the just war is consistent with biblical teachings about the need for a nation to defend themselves against their enemies. Now, I am going to need some readers here. Who wants to help? Let's see, Mark, Revelation 19:11. I need more. Roger, 13:1. Gene, Romans. Roger, I said Romans 13:1. I don't know what I said, but Romans 13:1. And actually, I'll have you read verse 3 after that, okay? Gene, Proverbs 21, verse 2. Kim, Matthew 5:9. Give me one more. Cheryl, Romans 12:18. And we will take a break, but I have more, don't you worry, for all you very eager people wanting to read. I'm going to start taking notes on who reads, and one of these days, I'm going to start calling on all the people who don't read. And you say, Pastor, you get people to leave church doing that. I know. I'm just saying I'm going to do it so that you'll feel pressured to I'll read, just let me know when Jesus wept comes. And and I'll read, Jesus wept. And but anyhow, all right. So we're going to look at the criteria for a just war and consider the biblical references behind it. All right. So first, number one, just cause. Is the reason for going to war a morally right cause, such as defending your own nation? All right? Revelation 19:11. Go ahead.
And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door.
I gave you the wrong verse. Revelation 19, verse 11. What did I tell you? You're in Genesis. Time out. let's just, did I say Genesis 19:11? I said Revelation. Okay, well, you know, I hope your counting skills are better when you're doing the book. I'm trying to be nice here, Mark, so I'll give you, go right ahead.
El hombre perfecto. And I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war.
Okay, so we here have Jesus at the second coming in righteousness. What does he do? Makes war. Is there any sin in what Jesus does? No. So here we have Jesus making war, and it is called righteous. So right then and there, you can have just cause for a war. Doesn't mean every war is just. It just means that there's a criteria that can be just. Now, secondly, not only just cause, but competent authority that has that the war has been declared not simply by a renegade band within a nation. All right, it's like if some cultic group out in the middle of nowhere says we're at war. Well, no, we're not. You might be, but our nation isn't, because it's not been declared by a competent authority. And so it needs to be by a recognized competent authority. Romans 13, verse 1. Go ahead.
Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God.
Okay, so you have your government that is recognized as the one that can declare war. If some faction group declares war, that's not a higher power, not one that be ordained of God. Now, thirdly, so we have just cause, competent authority. Thirdly, comparative justice. It should be clear that the actions of the enemy are morally wrong, and the motives and actions of one's own nation in going to war in comparison are morally right. Verse 3, Roger, go ahead.
For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same.
Okay, so government is to be a terror to what? To evil. So when the conduct of another nation is clearly, definably evil, and what they're doing is wrong, then and what you're trying to do is defend innocence, then you have comparative justice. Fourthly, you need the right intention. Is the purpose of going to war to protect justice and righteousness rather than to simply rob and pillage and destroy another nation? Proverbs 21, verse 2. Go ahead and read that.
Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord pondereth the hearts.
God knows why you do what you do. Some of us don't know why we do what we do. You ever do something, you're like, why did I do that? I don't even know. Guys, you ever say something and your wife says something to the effect of, what's wrong with you? And you, in your own mind, realize, I'm an idiot. I just saw a few looks, not at me, but why did I say that? Like, I knew prior to saying that wouldn't go well. And yet, it just came out. I don't know why. It just did. And, the Lord knows why we do what we do. Sometimes we don't know what we do, why we do it, all right? Anybody relate with me here? Is anybody with me? Okay, all right. I'm not alone. Okay, all right, wonderful. And actually, I think I've been good lately. I mean, when I say lately, I mean like the last 24 hours. And,
I
What's that? I know that, but see, I can't wait till tonight. Man, tonight, you just love sometimes when a Bible verse comes around and it helps you. All right? So the Bible tonight is, part of the passage is let not the, be angry and sin not, let not the sun set upon your wrath. And the whole point is that anger is meant to have a 24-hour shelf life. All right? And so you got to deal with it, move on, and hey, that's why I'm only going back 24 hours. I'm just trying to follow the Bible, okay? So in the last 24 hours, man, I have been great. I haven't said anything dumb. I feel like I'm on a good track right now, okay? And Rich can't say that, but the rest of us can. Don't worry, Rich, we got you covered. And yeah, but that was an accident. That wasn't like a deliberate dumb thing. So had a little mishap this morning. So I always, I make the coffee in the morning. And so I, like I always do, set the coffee up and put it in and it's the morning. Who's really paying attention to details? Well, I didn't put the carafe in. Yeah, just details. And then I went and took a shower. And I got out, walked into the kitchen, and coffee everywhere. I mean, it's all over the floor. It's all over the counter. It went in the drawer. And I'm like, who didn't put the craft in? So then I couldn't find it. So it was in the dishwasher. So it's like I'm actually mad at people for cleaning. And, but anyhow, so I
Wait, you didn't put it in at all?
no.
I thought you didn't put it in all the way.
No, I didn't put it in at all. Like, it was just empty, just pouring out, on the thing. So it's like steaming. It's going everywhere. It's all over the place. It's halfway across the kitchen. And because what it does is just filled up the top because it has that safety. So then it was just spilling over the side. And so now there's coffee grounds everywhere. And so what do? Well, I just put it in because there was still about half the water left in there. And so it brewed. It was probably full of coffee grounds. And so I bring it up to Jen. I'm like, hey, there might be a few coffee grounds in there. So you may want to stop it. I'm not sure. It was just 50-50.
Counter into the mug. You're learning. That's why they make straws.
Yeah. I figured, Steve, when the questioning starts, that eventually would come out, and that would go nowhere good. All right, and. No, I just didn't put it in, period. Like, it was in the dishwasher, didn't even, and I'm just wondering, like, how on earth is, I don't know. I mean, anyhow. But that wasn't me being, like, rude, saying something dumb. That was just doing something dumb, all right? That's a completely different topic, all right? But anyhow, right intentions. That's what we're on, and I had the right intention, which was to make coffee for my wonderful wife, which she did get her coffee. A little grainy, but so we want to make so the Lord is going to look at the intention of a nation. And why are you doing this? And God will hold people accountable. Sometimes people tell people something, but that's not their real intention. God knows. Hey, by the way, in our personal lives, we do the same thing. Sometimes we tell people our motivation for a decision we're making, and it's not a lie in the sense of it's true. But there's a lot more to our motivation than we're revealing, and we're being dishonest in the sense of withholding. And God will hold us accountable. Why? He tries the hearts. Sometimes we want to do things that we know aren't right, so we come up with reasons that make us look good, but they're not a real motivation. If that's you today, welcome to being a human being. I'm not saying it's right, but it's the reality. And what we need to do is self-evaluate before the Lord. What is my real motivation for doing what I'm doing? You know, there are people who come to church, but they don't come for Jesus. We say, well, why would people come to church not for Jesus? A lot of different reasons. Some come to make somebody else happy. A spouse, a parent, a sibling, a friend. I've gotten people to come here just because they like me. And it's true. Like, they're not really interested in church, but they like me, and they're trying to be nice to me. And they think, like, coming to church is they're doing me a favor. And I'm not upset they came, but I understand their heart's not for Jesus. It's just they like me. And I understand. I mean, I'm a likable guy. And, but that's not why we're here. You understand what I'm saying? And, some people, look, we've had people come that were local politicians trying to get votes. All right, I don't think the guy ever got elected to anything, but I still see his signs everywhere. Every year, there he is. I'm like, God never let that man get elected again, because the minute the election was over, he never came again.
And he hasn't. And he told us that he wasn't coming for that reason.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm not coming for votes. I'm really not. All right. After the election, never saw him again. He's never been elected to anything since. And but anyhow, this is another story. So some people come. Some people will go. Particularly, this can happen in it can happen in a smaller church, but typically this would happen in bigger churches, and that's business contacts. Oh man, I need to make contacts for my business. You go to a big church, there's a lot of people there, and people will naturally give business to people that are within the church. You remember down in North Carolina, that guy over at Gospel Light that stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from elderly people investing with him, and he got it all through church. It happens. I can tell you that guy's motivation wasn't Jesus. All right? So people come have not pure intentions plenty of times, and same thing with nations, and God will look at that. All right, another fifth reason, just war. What makes a just war? Number 5, last resort. Have all other reasonable means of resolving conflict been exhausted? Matthew 5, verse 9.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God.
Now, think about this. Peacemakers. Who are they? Well, they're people that make peace when there isn't. They're people that diffuse a situation. Have you ever met somebody who, when there's problems, they're like gasoline to the fire? It's like, well, there's a problem, yeah, and you make it worse. And then there's other people that there's a problem, and they come in and diffuse the situation. They find common ground. They make peace. Peace ought to be making peace ought to be the first recourse. War ought to be the last resort. You ever know people that like to get in a fight? They like conflict. Like the minute one thing goes wrong, let's go. They're just people that are like that, man. It's just the minute things don't go right, boom. They're ready to fight in verbally, physically, whatever. That's not God's plan. And that's not what a nation should do. Violence should be the last resort. Romans 12, verse 18.
If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men.
If it be possible. So what's that? There's sometimes it's not possible to live peaceably. If it be at all possible, as much as lieth in you. What is God saying? You got to take every ounce you can to live peaceably with somebody who's difficult. But sometimes you can't. Look, there's just some people and there's some nations there's no negotiating with. there's no reasoning with. They only respond to one thing. But you want to avoid that one thing as much as possible. And that's what we see here. Now, I'm going to need, let's see here. I'm going to need a few more readers. Okay, Steve, Luke 14, verse 31. Ben, Romans 12, verse 21. Yvette, Romans 13, verse 4. Hang on here. Give me one more. Give me one more who hasn't read. Beth Ann. Beth Ann, that'd be wonderful. I'll give you a long one. Psalm 68, verse 30. All right, Steve, don't worry. I've got a passage. This is great. Deuteronomy 20, verses 10 through 12, okay? It'll be a little bit before we get there. But, all right, so, number 5, reason for a just war. Number 5 was last resort. Number 6, probability of success. Probability of success. Steve, go ahead and read Luke 14, verse 31.
Or what king going to make war against another king sitteth not down first and consulteth whether he be able with 10,000 to meet him that cometh against him with 20,000?
You got to ask yourself, is it reasonable expectation that we're going to win? Because if you're not, you probably don't want to do it. You got to ask yourself that. Now, sometimes you may not have a choice. If a nation's invading you, you don't have a choice. But if you're going to go after somebody for a justifiable reason, you want to make sure that you're going to win that war, because this is the principle right here is before you do it, you need to sit down and ask yourself, can you do it? Can you do it? Because if you can't, don't. Which kind of ties in with the next point, which is the proportionality of projected results. Proportionality of projected results. Will the results that come from victory in war, will they be significantly greater than the harm and loss that will inevitably come with pursuing the war? Let's read Romans 12, 21.
Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good.
So is the evil that's going to come, you got to weigh these things out, the good versus the evil. And these are some of the things to consider. And so let's see, Romans 13, verse 4.
For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil.
All right, so this is talking about government again. It's the minister of God for thee to good. But if thou do evil, be afraid. He beareth the sword not in vain. One of the things that, and this is why we've got to pray for our governmental leaders as they make decisions, is you have to ask yourself when we're looking at, what is a just war, right? What is the proportionality of projected results? In other words, when you do this, there's going to be a negative side. Like you could be justified and defending your nation against an evil that exists, that's real, that needs to be stopped, but there's a price. And is that price worth it? You think of our governmental leaders back in World War II on D-Day. And you can go back, and I didn't really do the research on this, but you can go back, and I've looked at it before. But they knew there was going to be a heavy cost. But they deemed it worthy because of the evil they were facing. And they paid that sacrifice. I'll give you another one from World War II. Now, who knows? This is an easy question, okay? What ended the war in the Pacific Theater in World War II? The atomic bombs, 2 of them, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, why was and they knew we're literally killing hundreds of thousands of people, many of them innocent. So why did they do that? Does anybody know?
1,000 more troops to invade Japan and bring
Millions.
Millions, yeah.
Millions. Where was Josh stationed? Okinawa. The number of people that died in Okinawa was hundreds of thousands for one little tiny island. Japan was not going to surrender. And the only way the United States was going to win that war in conventional warfare was to go island by island. And hundreds of thousands, a lot more Japanese died than Americans. But when we look at the big picture of loss of life, for every little island, 100,000 people were going to die. And the decision was made, we can end this. And there will be a significant loss of life, but it will be less than if we do it the conventional way. These are not easy decisions to make. Not easy decisions to make. I know our government apologized for dropping the bombs. I wouldn't apologize, because if we hadn't, there would have been a whole lot more people that died. That's the reality of it. You have to weigh things out. Sometimes you might say, you know what, the cost isn't worth it. And this is why we must pray for our governmental leaders, because you know what, they're the ones that make the decisions. They're the ones that will be held accountable before the Lord for the decisions that they've made. Now, number 8, a right spirit. Is the war undertaken with great reluctance and sorrow at the harm that will come, rather than simply delight in war? There are people that delight in war. There are people who profit in war. There are people who love to kill in war. There are those that love the adrenaline rush that comes with combat, and they thrive in it. That's not the right spirit. Psalm 68, verse 30. Go ahead.
Rebuke the company of spearmen, the multitude of the bulls, with the calves of the people, till everyone submit himself with pieces of silver. Scatter thou the people that delight in war.
God says, scatter thou the people that delight in war. Are there people that delight in it? Yeah. There's soldiers that love fighting and killing. They don't do it with reluctance, but they enjoy it and are just looking for the next fight. And then there are people who profit. Right? There's just no way around it. There's money in war. That's the truth. All right? And I'm not against our military or defense contracts, but there are people, and some of you know this, there's a lot of money in military. And if you don't need it, there's no money in it. And you know, you remember the old saying that's in the Bible, love of money is the root of all evil. And so that doesn't mean there aren't good people in the military and good people in government doing government. There are. God, again, looks at the heart and the intentions. And so we need to remember that in addition to these criteria for deciding whether a specific war is just, advocates of the just war theory also have developed some moral restrictions on how war should be fought. So let's talk about, so that's what makes a just war, those 8 items. Now let's talk about restrictions on how to fight that war. If it's a just war, well then how do you do it right in a biblical way? First, a proportionality of use and force. No greater destruction should be caused than is needed to win the war. Deuteronomy 20, verses 10 through 12. Go ahead and read that, Steve.
Sorry, I was on the wrong passage.
Did I give you the wrong reference?
I don't know.
I think it's just contagious, Mark. It's just, it's just spreading, all right? But Deuteronomy 20, verses 10 through 12, all right? Whenever you're there, go ahead, and I'll wait till your pages stop turning so that I stop talking. All right, go ahead.
When thou comest nigh unto a city to fight against it, then proclaim peace unto it. And it shall be, if it make thee answer of peace, and open unto thee, then it shall be that all the people that is found therein shall be tributaries unto thee, and they shall serve thee. And if it will make no peace with thee, then will make war against thee, then thou shalt besiege it.
Okay, now, in history, have we ever heard of a people that they would come to a city and besiege it, and that city wanted to surrender, but they knew they would just kill them? That happens. There wasn't a surrender option, because if you did, they're just going to murder you. That is unbiblical. So you might be fighting a just war. If a combatant surrenders, they surrender. No harm is to come to them. Now, if they're going to fight, then they'll fight. But if they surrender, then you're not to harm them. All right? That's something that our military, for the most part, or at least in its writings, operates by. Discrimination between combatants and non-combatants, as much as and Steve, are you still there? I'm going to have you read 2 more verses in a second, all right? Just pick up in verse 13 in a minute. As much as is feasible in the successful pursuit of war is to be the adequate care to prevent harm to non-combatants, civilians. Go ahead and read verses 13 and 14 of Deuteronomy 20.
And when the Lord thy God hath delivered it into thine hands, thou shalt smite every male thereof with the edge of the sword. But the woman and the little ones and the cattle and all that is in the city, even all the spoil thereof, shalt thou take unto thyself. And thou shalt eat of the spoil of thine enemies, which the Lord thy God hath given thee.
All right, so in there we see he's telling them, the men, all right, now in biblical mindset, that's basically someone 20 years of older. Anybody who's a combatant, a male, the women wouldn't fight, the children wouldn't fight. And probably the elderly would not fight. But your fighting age men, basically, if they're fighting, you kill them, but you spare the women and the children. Now, a lot of places don't do that. They don't spare anybody. But when you're fighting a just war, when we're biblically, God puts restrictions on how an army is to conduct itself, and they are not to kill women and children. The world may not play by those rules, but we should. Now, one thing, I'm going to hit the pause button and say this. Pray for our soldiers. Because what happens is, in real life combat situations, it's chaos. And things happen. And sometimes, inadvertently, women and children do get killed. And I've talked with the men, many, over the years, that their action resulted in a civilian being killed inadvertently. It wasn't intentional, but it happened. And I've talked to several over the years, and that eats at those guys. They don't mind killing an enemy. They're trained for that. They understand that, and it's rationalized in their mind. But when you inadvertently kill somebody who was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, that's where they really struggle. We hear about PTSD with our soldiers. That's what eats at them. And you need to pray for them, because those are really hard things. You can rationalize killing someone who's trying to kill you. You can get your head around that one. But when you make a mistake or bad information or misdiagnosis of a scenario, you see something, but it was so quick and then you were wrong. you make a mistake. These are things that some of our soldiers have to live with. And you know, quite frankly, they don't talk about it. They're not going to bring it up. They're not going to mention it. It's not on the news. No one will ever know about it. It's just collateral damage. And it's the price of war. But we have good people, some of whom love God, that carry a great burden of that mistake. And they're good people. And we need to pray for them. Now, the goal should not be to harm. And there's a fundamental difference there, though. There's some who will kill women and children and don't think anything of it. What I love about our military is their desire is to protect the innocent. And when innocence is inadvertently taken, there's great grief and sorrow over that. And that's the right spirit. And we could say a lot of things about our country that maybe as Christians we don't agree with, but in general, the mindset of our military, I agree with. They're trying to protect innocence. They're not trying to harm people in any nation that we may be at. They're trying to protect women and children and people that want to do right. They're trying to help them. And we look at what happened in Afghanistan, and really the great tragedy is that our military spent 20 years trying to help that nation, to help good people govern themselves, and for whatever reason, it didn't work. And I'm not getting into it, okay? But it didn't work, and that's heartbreaking. And so, listen, we're out of time today, but we'll get back to this. We'll finish this up, and then we'll get into next week what the Bible says about pacifism, and we'll begin to talk about also just our defense, the United States defense policy as it pertains to what the government, or what the Bible teaches, all right? So let's have a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for the day, Lord. So glad to be able to be here today. I pray you bless our service to follow. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you guys. Got about 15 minutes till service starts, all right?